Americans as a whole are more confused now than ever about financial planning and everything. According to a Harris poll released in March, the number of Americans who gave themselves a failing grade on their knowledge of finance has doubled. With us now, Steve Orr, president, owner of Orr Financial Group. And it's amazing that, what, 8% of Americans say, just give me an F. I fail.
Yeah, and that's amazing that it's not higher than that.
Do you think everyone just got complacent with the way things were and said, well, we'll put our money here because that's what we've always done?
I think that's what it is. The system is set up so people think they do things a certain way and it'll work for them. They're finding out that it doesn't quite work the way that we've been taught.
How do you know what to do, though, realistically, Steve? And you know, I don't know you any more than Adam. How do I know if I give you my 401k that, or my IRA, that you're going to do the right thing with it?
That's a tough question, Barry. And I tell you, there's three things that people really need to do. Number one is they need to start over. They need to go back and take a look at what they're doing and say, you know what, it hasn't worked for me. I need to get more education on the subject and find out what to do. Number two is they need to quit spending more than they make. You know, you're never going to make it if your credit card debt is...
Well, the government does.
Yeah, that's right. If we could do what they did, we'd be okay, wouldn't we?
Yeah, wouldn't we, though? Realistically, though, it's a good point. If you don't have it, don't spend it.
That's right. That's right, because you can't get ahead by paying your bills on a credit card. And then number three, what you've got to do is you've got to get an objective view of what you're doing. You're asking the question today, you know, how do I find an advisor? Folks really don't know the difference between brokers, advisors, insurance agents, and so on and so forth. It's a confusing world. But you need to approach it like you do buying a car, for instance. Why don't, you know, when you buy a car, you spend months, sometimes years, researching what you want, or a TV. Do the same thing with your advisors, with your investment program. Find out what's really going on. Find out where the big boys play ball.
But it's not as easy, Steve, as just looking at just say a stock, for example, to track that stock for a year or whatever. It's not as simple as to say, well, they've made money for the past year. Why don't I put my money here?
No, it's not. And it's, you know, we live in the richest country in the world, but they never really teach us how it works. So we've got to go back and we've got to start doing some research on our own and find some people that we can trust to give you an objective review. That's the number three. You need to have an objective review of what you're doing.
How do you, where do you begin that research? What do you read? What's the magic book that you read to say, hey, give my money to Steve Orr?
Well, you need to start thinking. You know, people don't think, they react to things that they see on TV. They, you know, past performance is not an indication of future return. Bonds are the conservative side of your portfolio. Asset allocation. Those things really don't work, and they're not, they don't act the way that you think they do. You know, bonds, when interest rates increase, the value of bonds is going to decrease. And folks think that's the conservative side of their portfolio because they don't know difference. There's a few good classes around that people can take. They're hard to find because, you know, we're not set up for education in this country. It's amazing that we're not, but we're just not, Barry.
So what's the first step, Steve? Where do I, as a novice investor, someone who's getting late in life in their working career, where do I begin with that money? What's my magic percent to put away? And where do I go to know that I'm putting it in the right place?
Well, the optimum percent is 10%, but you have to do that from age 18 on.
Yeah, so a little late for some of us.
Yeah. So you kind of have to deal with life where you're at. And if you're starting out late, you've got to just invest more money. And you've got to get with a good advisor that can lead you down a decent path. The bigger companies are set up as marketing companies. They sell things, and you know, the regulators, they come in and they'll give them fines every once in a while. Then they go back to doing business as usual. You need to find a more of a boutique approach to what you do.
Is it ever too late?
Never. It's never too late. You've got to do what you've got to do. And there's solutions for everybody. You may not be able to get where you want to go, but everybody wants to get somewhere. And you've got to start somewhere, Barry. This is the time to do that.
And don't rely on the government, because as we see, Social Security and Medicare may not be there. Steve Orr, thanks. Pleasure meeting you. Thanks for coming in this morning. For all the latest in business news, go to KENS5.com, click on the business link under news. We're going to have a quick break, and Jared will come back with one last look at our forecast.